Hello everybody. So today we are bringing back the prediction videos. I'm going to try to pump out more videos, mix it up a little bit here and there. So if you enjoy the videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. So enough of the yapping, let's get right into it. First fight on the chopping block is Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Moreira. Veronica Hardy is a slight favorite. She is 29 years old. She is also 5'4", a little bit short, but that's okay. And Eduarda Ronda Moreira is 30 years old, coming in at 5'6". She has a record of 10-1. Veronica Hardy has a record of 9-4-1. So not the best record, but since she came off from that break, Veronica Hardy has looked much better. And with her just entering her physical prime, I think that she will probably get the job done. But Eduarda is no slouch either. I think that this will be a pretty fun fight, especially for WMMA standards. And I think that Veronica Hardy will either get a TKO win in the third round, or she'll win by decision. Next up, we have Oban Elliot versus Bassil Hafez. This should be a pretty good fight as well. Hafez is usually in entertaining fights. Hafez has a 9-4-1 record. He is 5'11". Oban Elliot is 26 years old, and he's coming in at 6 foot even, with an 11-2 record. So he's definitely a prospect to keep your eyes on. Bassil Hafez doesn't have the best record with 9-4, but like I said earlier, he's a very entertaining fighter. He's willing to take one to give one, and I think that's where he will fall short in this fight, because Oban Elliot is pretty good all around. He doesn't really stand out in any particular category, but he does mix it up pretty good, and he is a strong individual. But so isn't Hafez, so I don't think that'll play too much of a factor in this fight. With that being said, I think that Oban Elliot will win by submission in the third round. I think that this will be a longer fight, but I do feel like it'll also be an entertaining fight. Next up, we got Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. I'm not quite sure how to say that. Somebody let me know in the comments. Anyways, Gall is 32 years old, almost 33. And Ramiz is 31 years old, almost 32. Ramiz is also 5'10", so he is a little bit shorter than Gall at 6'2". And Gall, he's a strange fighter. Obviously, he is very good on the ground. However, his striking is, well, it looked very lackluster, but his most recent performance, he looked much better than he did previously, especially on the striking side of things. And Ramiz is no world beater himself. He has a record of 10 wins and 5 losses. Gall has a record of 7 wins and 6 losses, so yeah. And I agree with the odds on this one, because it's near even. But this is a prediction video. We're not going to skip over nothing. I think that Gall will shock the fans, look much better than many people think that he will look, but I don't think it'll be a knockout or a TKO. I think that Gall will get the submission in the second or the third round, and I think that it'll be a relatively boring fight. Next up, we have Marcin Tybura versus Jhonata Diniz. I'm a big fan of Diniz. He hits very hard, former Glory kickboxing champion. However, Tybura is very good on the ground, very good at top control, and Jhonata Diniz in his most recent fight, he got taken down and controlled by a wrestler that's not half as good as Tybura, so I think that that'll cause him some issues. Say what you want about Tybura, he knows how to win by decision, but he's also been knocked out. So, this is kind of a toss-up in my opinion. If Jhonata Diniz can land hard and land early, I wouldn't be surprised to see him knock out Tybura in the first round. But if Tybura can close the distance, get Diniz against the cage and get him down on his back, I think that he could be able to coast to a decision victory. But I'm a fan of the carnage, and I'm a fan of the slobber knockers, so I'm going to roll with Diniz on this one. I think that Diniz will land some very clean punches, rock Tybura, get him on his back after dropping him, then finish off with a few shots and have the ref step in and show mercy. Next up, we have Roberto Romero versus David Onama. David Onama is a very fun fighter, especially if you watch his Nate Landwehr fight. It's one of my favorite fights from Onama. And Onama has a record of 12 wins with only 2 losses, and Roberto Romero has an 8-3-1 record. Romero is also 24 years old, Onama is 30 years old, and Romero is 5'8", a few inches shorter than the 5'11" Onama. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not super familiar with Roberto Romero, but I am familiar with David Onama. So I'm going to pick Onama on this one. I think that he is the safer bet for multiple reasons, and I think that Onama will eventually be ranked. Obviously not in this fight. Roberto Romero is kind of a no-name at the moment. But like I said, he's 24 years old. He could shock the UFC fans. He could shock myself and get Onama out of there in quick fashion. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think David Onama will win by knockout in the 2nd or the 3rd round, if not by decision. And next up we have Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. Jim Miller has had an absurd amount of fights. He holds multiple UFC records. He has a 37 win and 18 loss record. Damon Jackson, much less fights. He has a 23-7-1 record. And Jim Miller, he got pieced up by Bobby Green. He's also 41 years old, 5'8", but he is very tough. Very hard to get him out of there. And Damon Jackson, he is 36 years old, so he is kind of old for the UFC, but much younger than Jim Miller. And as much as I want Jim Miller to win, I think that the safer bet is Damon Jackson. He chases the submission a lot, and eventually I do think that he'll find Jim Miller and win by submission. Guessing it'll be in the 2nd or the 3rd round. I don't think that Jim Miller will give up any submissions or leave himself open for hard shots in the 1st round. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see Jim Miller get the decision victory. So this one is also a toss-up in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm picking Damon Jackson by sub in the 3rd. Next up, we have Chris Weidman versus Eryk Anders. This should be a pretty good fight. We got the 40-year-old Chris Weidman versus the 37-year-old Eryk Anders. Chris Weidman, he is a very good grappler. He's pretty decent on the feet, especially with the threat of the takedown, and makes people kind of leave themselves open for shots sometimes because they're too focused on the grappling of Chris Weidman. They're around the same height as well. Chris Weidman is 6'2", and Eryk Anders is 6'1", and Chris Weidman is an underdog as well. So if you're a betting man, I would definitely put money on Chris Weidman because, like I said, he has more avenues to victory, whether it's by decision or he finds a submission or even a TKO on the ground. I don't think that he'll knock Eryk Anders unconscious, but I do think that he'll land a ton of shots on the ground and kind of leave Eryk Anders not intelligently defending himself and get the TKO that way. But that'll only come in the later rounds, either late round 2 or late round 3. Next up, we have one of the better fights on the card with Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGhee. I'm a fan of both of these guys. Marcus McGhee, very fun striker, very herky-jerky, but he is very, like I said, entertaining. And Jonathan Martinez, very intelligent striker. Outside of his Jose Aldo fight, he looked like he might be the next guy up, but Jose Aldo really kind of exposed him. The odds are also pretty even, which I agree with, because Marcus McGhee, he has a record of 9-1, but he is 34 years old, so he is a bit older. And Jonathan Martinez is 30 years old, so he is in his physical prime versus McGhee, where he's kind of starting to stray away from his physical prime. They're both 5'8", both have a 69-inch reach, and I think that Jonathan Martinez is a safer bet just due to his experience with a 19-5 record, as well as his youth over Marcus McGhee. But Marcus can crack, so I think that the fight will play out like this. I think Martinez will be the more active fighter, and he'll be winning up until he's not, when Marcus McGhee cracks him with a big shot. Then we'll see Marcus McGhee kind of get the momentum, probably in the late 1st, early 2nd. And I think that Marcus McGhee will end up winning by decision. But like I said, Martinez could also win by decision, so this is another toss-up fight. Really depends on who shows up better that night. But if you're a betting man, definitely bet on Jonathan Martinez. He's the safer option. Next up, we have the Brazilian Conor McGregor, Mauricio Ruffy versus James Llontop. I agree with the odds on this one. I think Mauricio Ruffy is going to dispose of James Llontop in spectacular fashion. Ruffy is a very good striker, 28 years old, 5'11". James is 25 years old. He's had quite a few losses with a 14-4 record. And I think Mauricio Ruffy just has a ton of momentum, ton of hype, and I think that's for good reason because he looked spectacular in his last fight. And I think that Ruffy will get James out of there in the late first, early second round. And next up, we have Karine Silva versus Viviane Araújo. Karine Silva has an 18-4 record. Viviane has a 12-6 record. Karine is 30 years old, almost 32. And Viviane is 37 years old, almost 38, which is pretty old in terms of UFC. And I think Karine will end up winning by submission in the first or the second round. I think that Araújo is kind of slowly on her way out. Meanwhile, Karine is just kind of getting started for the most part. So yeah, like I said, submission in the first round. Next up, I'm not going to go over this fight too much just because I did a whole video on this fight. So go check that out. We have Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. Let's just say I agree with the odds on this one. Bo Nickal is a huge favorite at -1,000. Like I said, go check out my video. And if you comment that you watched that video from this video, then I want you to comment below on my Bo Nickal video, and I'll send you a bouquet of roses, some chocolates. So yeah, go check it out. Next up, we have Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This fight's going to be a banger. This could go either way. I do think Charles Oliveira is the safer bet just because he has way more avenues to victory. He's already knocked out Michael Chandler, and it's obvious that he has the capability to submit Michael Chandler, but Michael Chandler has that equalizer. He has that power and explosiveness, and we haven't seen Michael Chandler in over 2 years now, and he's 38, so it's not looking great for him on that aspect, but this is going to be a very fun fight, and I think Charles Oliveira will either get a knockout or a submission in the second or the third round, and this is a 5-round fight as well, so I don't think we'll see it hit the 5th round, and if we do, it'll be a very entertaining fight. So yeah, do Bronx in the second or the third. Next up, we have Jonathan Jones versus Stipe Miocic. I'm going to go with the popular opinion on this one. Stipe hasn't fought in a very long time. He's 42 years old. He's been in a lot of wars. Got knocked out by Francis Ngannou, which has to take at least a year or two off of your lifespan. So Jon Jones probably will get him out of there. Hopefully not in the first round, just for Stipe's sake. I don't want him to go out like Cyril Gane. That'd be a rough way to retire. But I do think Jon Jones will submit him. Maybe knock him out, but more likely by submission in the 3rd or the 4th round. But that's kind of wishful thinking, because we don't know how Stipe Miocic will look in this fight. Because like I said, he hasn't fought in a very long time. And Jon Jones, he's basically undefeated, even though he has that one loss. Everybody knows why. But at the end of the day, I just hope we see Jon Jones versus either Tom Aspinall, which in my opinion is the best fight, or the long shot, go for Alex Pereira, kind of solidify the light heavyweight stuff, as he is the greatest light heavyweight fighter, or possibly the greatest fighter if he can get Alex Pereira out of there. Or Alex Pereira comes up to heavyweight, who's to say? I just want to see Jon Jones fight one of the top dogs, because, well, Stipe Miocic is a legend. I don't think he's the best today, as he was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, those are my predictions. I hope you guys liked the video. I kind of made this on a whim, just to kind of get out another video and try to interact with you guys more. So, if you guys liked the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys have a great week and enjoy the fights this weekend. Bye.